anymore then.
I'm thinking I'm going to be a stage hypnotist.
Yeah,
That's right up my
Be
street.
Where were you 2 weeks ago? Well, if you two start doing stage hypnosis, you've immediately doubled the UK population of female stage hypnosis.
There you go.
That's all right. Okay.
I was there, the American one, absolutely nude.
Oh yeah,
Really? There's a one in America does it
Have
on
you seen this?
nude.
On YouTube.
Okay, what's
If you
it?
search
I'll
for
do
it,
the set away and I'll do my pole dancing.
well, she comes on in wearing clothes, and she basically makes the hanky disappear, and then she'll pull it out of her top, like that, and she takes her top off. Then she makes the hanky disappear and pulls it out somewhere else, I can't remember where. And then she takes her pants off. In the end, she pulls it. It's the same method, put it into there, it disappears, and then just reaches between her legs.
I'll take 10.
YouTube, yeah, it's on YouTube somewhere.
Making magic.
Search for it, it's hilarious.
She starts off, she's wearing a business suit, didn't she?
Yeah, that's it, yeah. Slowly gets more.
I'm going to do
Till she's
bondage
totally
and domination
naked.
hypnosis. I'm going to do some themed shows.
We have a strange door and window.
Weird stuff.
Not bad, darling. Not bad.
I'm going to go David Lynch on all this.
Oh, she's amazing.
Don't start getting groovy now.
So, don't feel in any way that if you were to want to buy more DVDs and stuff that it would be an idea to go on one of my websites and get them. Don't let that image of her private school education come to your mind at any time.
You mean the Ferrari when she's 18?
Yeah, sort of. Right, yeah, that was before the break. Seesaw induction, yeah. Fundamentally, that's all you need to know about it. We did it yesterday, you felt it, it is incredibly simple. There's various variations on it you can use if you so desire, but those variations I'll leave you to look at. The Seesaw induction DVDs, which conveniently you're walking away with, so we don't need to spend time on that. We covered that yesterday, didn't we? What? Timeline therapy?
Yeah.
Yeah, we did. Alright, that's cool. Right. I'm getting heckled now by my own daughter. This is wonderful. Yeah, so if someone's got no arms, well, what do you do? Induction, can I borrow you? Because then it's, so we don't get that situation of somebody not seeing it properly. Again, it doesn't really matter on the context, therapy stage, whatever, but obviously the context of this weekend's therapy stage. So they've got no arms, let's say they've got no legs, let's make it a bit severe. I'm guessing that, yeah, I'm guessing they've got a head, because it would help they've got it.
Is this politically correct?
It's probably not on so many levels, but if I would have been better is would have got literally somebody with no legs or arms. Just for this
I know somebody in Sheffield, but she's a bit of a bitch.
To be fair, I mean, it's probably the sort of thing that does actually
Knock you off a bit.
not be able to scratch that itch.
Well,
You've got
Right for
right
one, let's see how I can play.
So it's a daft example, but if for some reason they can't move around, physically not able, for some reason, or they just haven't got arms or legs, amputee, whatever, I like things where they physically feel something. That's what's good with Seesaw. Your arm does get tired, and then there's a sense of relief when you're in that comfy position. So that, as I said yesterday, can attach the idea of, we felt something for real. This must be the lucky juju starting to happen. So they're buying into this state of mind that they need to be in. So I would probably, if they've not got any arms or legs, I'd probably simply say what I'd like you to do. And obviously if they're in a reclining chair, so much the better.
Don't need the foot.
But strap them in place. They might, you know, start tilting it and they go like slide. But yeah, use some common sense, obviously.
You did the Seesaw, now it's time for the slides.
Yeah.
I would love to ride the bikes.
Pop your seatbelt on.
Anyway, right. So I probably, they're in a more comfortable than these chairs.
We can't sell this DVD now.
Oh, I can. I don't know. Hypnosis for cripples. Anyway, just close your eyes. Okay. Let's just assume they can close their eyes. Otherwise this is going to work.
That doesn't have your eyes open, translate.
Close your eyes, that's fantastic. What I'd like you to imagine in your mind's eye, you may be able to see it clearly, or it may be a case of you just thinking the words within your mind. You won't know exactly how you're able to visualise that. If you can't see it as a big image, it doesn't matter, but maybe you can, maybe you can't. Just think the words if you need to, referring back to yesterday's question. It's up to them basically. But I'd just like you to imagine in a way that feels right for you, or imagine the words or whatever, that inside your mind is a control room. It controls every action in your mind and in your body. I'd like you to imagine going into that control room and finding the head engineer that's in charge. And just imagine walking in, finding the head engineer and asking them where the dial is, the button or the switch, whichever it may be in your mind's eye, that controls all the little muscles in your eyelids and around your eyes. And obviously I don't know whether the head engineer has suddenly made you think and decide that it's a switch, a button, a lever, a dial, whatever it may be. But go over in your mind's eye to that particular dial, switch, lever, whatever it may be, that's right for you, that controls all the little muscles around your eyelids and around your eyes. And turn the switch off, or turn the dial down, or flick the lever. Whatever you need to do so that you've turned off all the energy and all the power to all the little muscle groups in your eyelids and around your eyes. And when you know, using your powers of intelligence, imagination and concentration effectively, when you know in your mind's eye is 100% total reality, that you flick the right switch or turn the right knob or flick the right lever, so that there's no more power going to all those little muscles in your eyelids and around your eyes. So they become so limp, so loose, so relaxed, so heavy and so tired, like a loose, limp rag doll. Almost as if I was to ask you to try and open your eyes, you'd find that the more you tried, the more they'd be locked, glued, welded, cemented together, until I say otherwise. And if I were to ask you to do that, it wouldn't bother you, worry you or concern you, because you know all you'd need to do afterwards is flick that switch back on, reconnect the power, and you'd be back to normal in every way. But just to prove to yourself how wonderful your powers of intelligence, imagination and concentration are, take a few moments to realise and ensure that you have turned off the right switch, lever, dial, whatever it may be, and that all the energy and all the power has been cut off to all the little muscles in your eyelids and around your eyes. And when you know for sure in your own mind's eye, just prove to yourself that you've done that correctly, prove to yourself there's no power to your eyes, and prove it to yourself by just trying to open your eyes and proving to yourself that they are indeed locked, glued, welded, cemented in place. Because you find that the more you try, the more they stick. And the more they stick, the more you can try, but it's just so much easier to let your head fall forward and relax, drifting down, sinking down, drifting down, sinking down. Alright, open your eyes. This is what is known as the Dave Alman eye closure induction, which apparently is the fact that you get them to a point where they can't open their eyes. That's what all the emphasis is put on, and that is the way they will perceive it after the event. Ultimately, if we break it down, let's be honest, what you actually are saying to them is, and the key phrase is, you in a way that's right for you, turn off, you heard what I said. You basically say things along those lines. The key phrase, though, is, using your powers of intelligence, imagination and concentration, onus on them. Dave Alman didn't use that phrase, I've had it in. I just find it helps anything be more successful, putting the onus on them like that. You say to them, when you know, when you are 100% certain, 100% total reality, that you've done this correctly, all the emphasis on them. I always do things so it's never my fault, it's always theirs. which goes back to yesterday, responsibility, commitment, process. You said then, when you're certain, then and only then, just prove to yourself how effectively you've used your powers of intelligence, imagination and concentration effectively, and try, implying they can, to open your eyes. They may try, they might not. If they do try, they're going to do it in such a manner that they don't open their eyes. Ultimately, numbers game, because to open them at that point is for them to say to themselves they didn't do it correctly. But when you then say that's it, stop trying now, just let your head fall forward, and you just literally, gently, thumb on the shoulder, finger on the back of the neck, it doesn't take much pressure, head forward, drifting down, sinking down, and then going to something like the staircase, deepener, of, counting backwards from 10 down to 1 that we covered yesterday. They are arguably hypnotised for the same reasons that we said yesterday. So that is what I'd do if the seesaw was not going to be appropriate.
Just to chip in there, normally when we do these demonstrations of Alex doing inductions and I'm the sort of test subject, as it were, you kind of go through the motions and things. I have to say, he's never done that on me. I've done the induction, but I've only used it a couple of times, and he's never actually done it on me. And and I've never been hypnotised, as people would like it to be known. And I have to say, then I thought, oh, sorry, I might as well go along for the ride on this. I'll imagine the little head engineer, and I'll imagine turning off my lever, and I genuinely imagine turning off the lever. And when he said try and open your eyes, so I thought I'll go for it. When he said try and open your eyes, and if anyone was looking closely, I went, which is basically what you'll see when they try and open their eyes. You can kind of see their eyelids are kind of expanding and closing, but not opening. Normally that's what I just do for these demonstrations to show them what it would look like. But then I just genuinely, I couldn't, and this shows, even though it's a placebo, and even though when you know it's a placebo, and I've done hypnosis for as long as I have, and done this to as many people as I have, I still, in my head, I'm going, I know it's only suggestion, I know it's only this, I know it's only that, but you just go, I still can't open them. I genuinely then couldn't open my eyes.
I wish I had all my detector.
Genuinely swear. I swear down.
No, I do. Nice one.
I got to the point. I just couldn't. Just because I convinced myself that I was going to let it work on him. But I think it proves the point.
It was either it was because you were a dirty stop out last night.
Yeah.
Now there is a variation on that, which is even more likely to work. But the point is, if you phrase that right, like I did, they really only have one choice, and that is to keep their eyes closed. Because of the way it's been phrased. But later they'll come to believe they kept their eyes closed, but you suggested it, so therefore the lucky juju's working. That's what it's all about, creating that content.
Oh, sorry, I was waiting for fly.
All right, I thought that was a question.
No, actually, as well, you actually said that if he doesn't keep his eyes closed, he's thick.
Well, in
a
so
way,
many words,
yeah.
by prove to yourself you've used your intelligence, imagination and concentration effectively. Yeah.
You had a client open their eyes though.
I've had people open their eyes before. When they do, I go, all right.
You are thick.
You mustn't. No, just react like I'm not bothered. Always react as though you're not bothered. Okay, I'll tell you what then, close your eyes, and you just go into it again, you go, alright, go back into the room. This time, find the right bloody doubt. You could do that, you could do that, and really put the emphasis in, or you could just go, the guaranteed route. I'm just giving you a few options here. You only ever need maybe 2 inductions. 1, seesaw would be my priority. Or number 2, if they've got no arms or legs, what we just did. Or number 3, worst case scenario, no arms, no legs, I don't know. No eyelids. It doesn't matter, because as long as you do some process or ritual, and it seems believable, it still works, but then it would be refer back to complete mind therapy. The only difference being they wouldn't be able to close their eyes, because, well, their eyelids, because they haven't got any, but boring them to sleep, or getting them to physically tense whatever few muscles they have got and releasing them so they feel some genuine feeling of relaxation that gets attached to your words, which is pretty much what...
Turn the lights off and read the script under the desk.
Sit behind them with it.
Yeah, you could. So you don't really need to, you really don't need shed loads of. People get caught up in this idea of, I've done another course. I've got even more tools in my toolkit now. I'm more versatile. Fuck off. You brainwash wanker. What you actually is less money in the bank. And what you've actually got is basically you've just saved your little brain cell that clearly you haven't got many of if you went on another course. Because someone else had to clearly sit down and go, let's nick that, put that together. You can take any of this. The real message here this weekend is that you can make up your own shit. As long as you put it across that. Pretty much, even any, let's face it, any even so-called conventional, respectable, mainstream stuff like cognitive behavioural therapy, transactional analysis, talk about that very briefly. I've got transactional analysis, fuck it, I'll go off on one. Here you go, this is all you need to know about transactional analysis in the real world. That's actually of any fucking real use in terms of the context you're going to be getting clients like this, which we'll get it on with. All you need to know is this. A, B, C. 1, 2, 3.
Can you simplify this a bit?
Right. P, A, C. This is all you need to know about transactional analysis, right? Because basically, you don't need to know anything about it. But truly, if you want to sound like you know about it, this will be enough, right? There are, according to transactional analysis, and it's alright as a metaphor, a model, if you're going to go into talking therapies, which is basically getting people to relive shit again and again and again, to some point that they either stop coming to see you, or they just wake up, smell the coffee and think, fuck me. Or you know, something snaps in them and they actually do just like think, this is fucking ridiculous. I'll pull myself together. Or that, you know, their interactions of offloading shit, problem shared is problem half apparently, and feeling that they are special for the hour session, they're the centre of the universe, and perhaps not feeling as loved, wanted, needed, appreciated. Oh dear, it's all back. Everything we said yesterday applies to transactional analysis as well. The only other bit really is the idea that, and this also gets termed as crew resource. Transactional analysis, given a different title, they call crew resource management, for airline staff, sometimes for training in management companies. So, if you had 3 different things in order, it would be 1, 2, 3. We're following this on that, right? If we use letters instead of numbers, it'd be A, B, C. Right? But obviously, because it's going to be a course that's going to take days, it's going to be a bit more complicated than that. So, rather than using A, B, C, or 1, 2, 3, we'll use PAC. Now, PAC is standing for parent, adult, child. Sometimes people will say it's POC, which is parent, observer, child. So, where the adult bit is, that could be adult or observer, depending on which shitey manual you're reading. And to be honest, there's loads of other ways of it being explained as well. But they're all fundamentally the same. And the idea is that, as we said yesterday, we mentioned inner child work. We all, at some level, are kids inside. I'm going to come to inner child work in a minute. I'm going to give you a wonderful technique for people who are psychologically fucked up. Right? That, you know, for emotional shit and all that kind of stuff. Because the phobia stuff that we'll do after lunch is like, that's a fucking piece of piss. You've done the job in next to no time and then you bore them with CMT. But if they're more like one of Richard Bandler's clients, if you were to want to subject yourself to sitting through that kind of crap, that is, frankly, I'd just send those people to other therapists and take a commission. Because I don't want to go do well in myself. But if you wanted to, then you know you need to make it a bit entertaining for yourself. So we'll come to inner child in a minute. But anyway, right. Parent, adult, stroke, observer, child. The idea being that the child is the immature one. Yeah? The immature part of you. The inner child, it can get called in other therapies. Then you've got part of you that is, you know what I keep saying, part of you. That'll come in for a reason in a minute. So you've got the child, that's the childish and mature thing. You've got the parent part of you. In other words, the part of you that knows it's probably not a good idea at the business meeting to suddenly go, you know, I've got a toy car in my briefcase, shall we play Brum Brums? You know, that's the way I describe it. Yeah? The parent that's telling the inner child, don't do that. So you know, like if you get a little voice inside your head when you're looking over a lovely cliff or something, the little voice is going, go, fucking jump. It'll be fine, come on, jump. And we've all had it. Anyone who says they haven't, well, you know, you run a little voice somewhere in your head goes, you're a people surviving. I wonder, you know, do you do that? That is the child, the mischievous, immature bit, right? Well, then the parent goes, or the voice in your head, if you know, related to other stuff, goes, don't be daft. That's really not a good idea. No, not good. You're going to get hurt, right? Now, then the adult stroke observer, shall we say. I prefer observer because parent technically should be an adult anyway. So, we'll say observer. Although it does tend to be called parent, adult, child, but we'll say observer. Is the part of you that, the way I'll put it, and I do explain things differently than what is in the conventional books, but it does ultimately mean that it's the part of you that is judgmental, that looks at other people and goes, what a fucking idiot. I wouldn't do that. Or they shouldn't have done that, right? You're following this so far? Trust me, we're on to about day 2 of the course now, in normal terms. So, generally speaking, and this is the model they'll put across to you, and brainwash you into believing, so that when you go away and you're doing your like talking therapies and, oh, tell me more about that, and perhaps look at it from a different position. Oh, perceptual positions, they call it in NLP. Perceptual positions. Different positions of the way you perceive things. It's the same fucking thing with a different name, right? We all have an inner child, there's nothing wrong with that, unless we listen to the inner child telling us to jump off the fucking... And I'm sorry, you know, you're chopping the veg, and at some point, you might, if you've had a shit there, the little voice goes, could fucking cook myself. That'd be a laugh, wouldn't it? Just me then. Now, this does happen to people. It is just me, isn't it? But then, the parent voice kicks in and goes, not a good idea. Make a mess on the floor. Hospital, not a good idea. Now, you may then come out of that situation, and in kicks the observer part, thinks, what a fucking idiot. What was that all about? Now, that's one thing that can be like, in other words, mental conflict. Let's just call it simply that, because that's all it fucking is about. You can drag it out and say different things. Ultimately, what transactional analysis is about is depending on what situation, especially if it's an emotional thing, blah blah blah, interaction, the person is currently in. If that is not appropriate for them, it's identifying whether they're listening too much to the child and acting too immature or childishly, or if they are being too parental and strict and holding themselves back by being too critical, for example, or they're spending too much time sort of being disassociated, being confused about which to do, or being disassociated, looking at other people thinking, I should be doing something like that. And it is essentially, and we're getting nods again because I'm guessing you've had to go through kind of training. Essentially, that's it, isn't it?
Yeah.
That's it, essentially.
Yeah.
I mean, you could have done a couple of day course on that to ultimately walk away knowing that. So, how is that relevant to everything else we've spoke about? Well, it is because with emotional issues and stuff it is, definitely. Because, yeah, it is true in so much as we all have the inner child with us, we all are childish on some level, we all do enjoy, in certain circumstances, being a bit silly, you know. We all, well, the majority of us all, do have the parent part of you that sort of, it's the voice that goes, don't do that. And we all do become judgmental of ourselves in certain contexts, going into the observer but disassociated mode, or become judgmental of other people and to involve looking at them so that we don't spend time in those two. And it is about things being in balance, because if you spend too much time being the parent, so to speak, i.e. a whole simple proverb, saying, call it what you will, that pretty much sums it up rather than hours of bollocks theory. All work and no play makes Jack a dull boy. Think of it that way and that pretty much sums up what they could take hours to tell you. So there has to be a balance, a work-pleasure balance. I'm not saying it's all about work and pleasure, but I'm using that as the example. There's got to be a balance in the mind so the person is normal, shall we say. Whatever the fuck normal is, whatever their perception of normal is, or whatever society's perception of normal happens to be. And I will say that phrase, whatever a particular society's perception of normal happens to be, because different societies have different perceptions. And what some people get locked into loony bins for here in England, they don't in other countries, it's classed as normal. And vice versa. So it is a lot to do with society, environment. This is how it links into everything we said yesterday.
People that were considered mad in their time, we look at as geniuses now, don't we?
Exactly.
So, yeah.
So, having a consideration of that, if you are going to get into dealing with people with emotional issues, as opposed to just habits, addictions, phobias and stuff, which are the simple part of it, which is why I'm leaving that till after lunch, because like, that's what to do for smoking, that's what. If you're going to get into the higher end clients, this kind of shit will become more relevant for you to easily identify which category the person's got a deficiency in, shall we say. That sounds all very negative, but where the imbalance is. So that you can concentrate on helping them through whatever suggestions you give them, or visualisations you get them to do, or whatever, to put things more back into balance. And it is pretty much, you know, people who've done long courses on this will say, fucking unethical that, saying it's as simple as that and sending people out there doing it. But you know what? It is as simple as that, and it is about common sense. It's about, in the terms of being the, it is, despite the fact the book says, as a therapist, you should not be judgmental. You shouldn't let them know, you shouldn't let, the truth is, you don't let the client know you're being judgmental, but you've got to be the observer that is fucking judging them to work out where the problem is, so you can most effectively, efficiently and rapidly provide them with the solution, or formulate one that you make up on the spot through different techniques of ritual, whatever, that is focused. So if I thought that someone was being too parenty, too almost strict on themselves, not letting themselves have enough fun time, I would be inclined to, because they're paying me as the perceived expert, yeah, the authority figure, all those other elements are in play. I'd be inclined to go to the, and this is not my idea, I developed the idea, and certainly the name hypnosensory therapy, which is copyrighted not to me but to Barry Sendron, a colleague of mine. But I came up with the name based on some ideas he'd come up with, which is basically all the stuff we've talked about, but then adding props to it. I'd go to second-hand shops and I'd buy a load of cheap kids' toys, doll's house furniture, stuff like that, literally doll's house furniture. And because it's a matter of ritual, we need them to get more used and more relaxed to using the childish side of them. I'd literally put the furniture down and I go, right, I'm not going to tell you whether there's a right or wrong answer for this. And to be honest, maybe there is, maybe there isn't. I'll tell you afterwards. But there's something wrong with that furniture in there. What, you won't necessarily know how you know, but whatever you get an instinct or a feeling for, just make it right. Leave them playing fucking doll's house furniture for 10 or 15 minutes. Now, this sounds bizarre, but I have seen, and sadly they're no longer available on DVD, they've been withdrawn from the market because Barry did consider that interventions such as that I just suggested were too powerful to be let loose on people learning them on DVD and going out there doing them. I personally agree on the one level. On the other level, if you've got the insurance and you know what I taught you yesterday and what I teach you this afternoon about abreactions, the most important thing to deal with, and health and safety and this, that, the other, that who has the right on any level to say, because as long as you know you end up getting past with your CRB check, criminal records bureau and this, that, the other, then clearly you're not an axe murderer. As long as you pass these things that we'll talk about later and are assessed as being a sane, legally okay individual to be going out there doing this, then I'm sorry, but you know, I say just go for it. But I have seen with my own eyes grown men messing with this furniture and getting so absorbed, fixated on it, thinking, well, this is obviously, must be relevant to my treatment because that's why I'm bloody here, sort of thing, that they start worrying and they'll start thinking in their head, well, what relevance is this to my issue or problem? And they'll think, well, there must be one, but you're not going to tell me till after. Right, okay, I don't want to get this wrong then. And then they'll start thinking, what is right? I've got to move something around. Now, all this is a physical metaphor for changing things around. Ultimately, that's it. All they're going to do is mess around with some doll's house furniture or not, to a greater or lesser extent. And however they mess it around, the end result is you tell them, that's fantastic. You know what? Does that feel right for you? And if they go, yeah, then you go, that's brilliant. That's what it is. You know what? And while they're in this state of confusion, you know what? You know that thing that was bothering you in the past? All the same sort of phraseology it's in the past, you know, that used to bother you. Just try and get a sense of a feeling like you used to do before. Just try and play what you can. Calibrate it. Technique that we used yesterday. How much lower is it now? And I've witnessed grown men break down in tears when they realise that it has now gone down dramatically, the number, which is to them the recognition, the proof, convince or whatever. For what? Well, why? Because it's relief, because they felt daft about the process. It's a relief they've done it right. Why? Because it might have been pleasurable on some hidden dark level if they hadn't done, you know, they were letting out the side of them that they've been repressing. To be honest, I don't care which of them it is. The point is, it works. It's a ritual. It's a fixation of attention. It's somewhat wacky and unexpected, so it's interrupting patterns. It's a non-verbal metaphor for change. It is certainly memorable. And it doesn't have to be doll's house furniture. I mean, oh bloody hell, I mean, you know, Barry came up with fantastic ideas such as giving them an egg whisk and eggs in a big plastic jug and getting them to really whisk the eggs, and as they're whisking the eggs, more and more and more and more, that's taking out all the aggression and anger that they had for certain people and situations, and used it for anger management. Incredibly effective. thinking outside the box. It worked. The point is, results count. It worked. Nick and Eva Speakman, the television life coaches, they get paid thousands of pounds a session. People travel from all over the world, not just celebrities, to see them. And yes, when they have travel from all over the world or wherever, they do, because they guarantee essentially a cure. You're not supposed to guarantee a cure, but they do, because no one's ever going to complain, because they've never not cured somebody. Because they've set up such an environment and framework and everything's in place. And, you know, they've essentially got the cure, the job done in 5 minutes, less than sometimes. As a rule, they will leave that it's done in 5 minutes bit towards the end, and Nick has actually said in his own DVDs, a lot of it's for his own amusement, the rest of it, but it also gets the client being a bit more childish. Nick's thought, I believe, and if I'm wrong, I apologise to him, but and to an extent I believe, is that it's better to be more childish, and I don't mean going out on the street and acting like, but allowing your inner child to come out and you know, have a laugh and do daft things and be wacky and not be too serious all the time, which means, you know, the more you laugh, you release endorphins, so naturally, therefore, you're more relaxed, less stress, blah blah blah. It's a knock-on effect. It's a lifestyle choice. So he gets them doing weird and wacky things. You know, there was somebody on their TV show who, it was what I'd call an emotional shit issue. One of these that normally it would be talking therapies that deal with it. And they'd rake it all over. And how did that make you feel? Well, I'll tell you what, take a sit back, go into that position. Think of it from that point of view. That's what all this is bloody about, looking at it from different points of view. And this will go on maybe for weeks. No, Nick and Eva, 1 session, you're cured. So they let them, you know, for a bit come out with, you know, what's so negative? Well, people don't like me, they say this and word, they put me down. All right, okay. Well, you better throw some mud and crap on that window then, ain't you? Got right. And what else did they say? Well, throw some more mud on the window. And gets them to literally, as they're recounting every negative thing, throw more and more mud at the window. So the windows are completely bloody covered in cack. And takes them inside the house and goes, so what you're saying is, that's your shitty life that you're looking at right now. You can't see through the windows. They say, ramping the pain up. Yeah? But you want rid of that permanently, don't you? Gone. Future pacing. Really ramping the pain up to the point they want to... So, well, there you go. There's a hose pipe, there's a bucket, there's a chamois. And literally gets them to go and clean the windows. And casually says to them, and what are you doing that? Just think about how much better you feel now that you're completely removing that from your life. Leaves them to it to clean the windows. You know what? Person cured. It sounds mad, and Nick has a good laugh about it. But the reason I can talk about this is because it was broadcast on their television show. So I'm not breaking any client confidentiality, and Nick hadn't either. But this is stuff I have seen them working with clients one-to-one that I can't talk about. And they do genuinely do this wacky stuff with their genuine one-to-one clients. It's not just for the telly. But when you break down what went on there, it is all the stuff I've talked about yesterday and today. Just, they've thought outside the box. Someone who had an addiction to eating too much cakes and chocolate and biscuits and sugary stuff, they used their visual cortical displacement therapy technique, which, as I say, is sort of a combination of a swish pattern of various other bits. We'll talk about it a bit later. But they used a technique. It could have just as easily been what we did yesterday. But prior to doing that technique, they wanted to ramp the pain up as much as possible. So the person feels really bad about the idea of continuing in that manner of life. So that it's any opportunity to get away from that and move towards that which they desire is like going to be grasped with both hands, or rather with all elements of the mind. So when the client arrived, there is an absolute buffet delight of cakes, gâteaux, biscuits, everything that they said that they don't like eating, there, on a huge, like, banquet table. Because they're rather fortunate to live in a massive mansion. Because they are very cashed up members. Now this is the last thing the person expected, so you've got an immediate pattern into it. I'm coming here and I'm paying like thousands to avoid all this, and there's like at least 2 days supply of the stuff. You know, probably like more like 2 weeks, but you don't know. And they got the person, and they'd already told the person to come with a change of clothing that they had. They got the person to fill up the welly boots, stuff cake in them and this, that, the other, big pair of wellies, and took them outside. And they got the person to take the shoes and to stand in the welly boots with all this crap then running up, which is food, all mashed up, horrible, and pushed cakes in the face and made them... I kid you not, just basically covered them in cack. Well, food cack. At the beginning, this person no doubt felt a little bit stupid. Probably did think, oh, what the hell have I let myself in for? There'd be confusion going on. The more they were thinking about it, think, well, this is a good idea, it's painful, it really ramps the pain up. The interaction was then done and calibrated by the nature of oh, big galaxy bar, okay, do you want this one to eat? Now, normally they would have said yeah, but by this point they're a little less likely to say yes. But whatever the number is, they do the intervention, whatever that may be, could easily be whatever we did yesterday. Calibrate it again, which shows the number's gone down. Technically, job done. And then follow up the line, well, it should take a few moments to allow that to fully sink into your mind and body, the fact that, you know, you have changed those things, all the language patterns it's left behind in the past. Just take this towel and you can use that shower over there, that's why you brought your change of clothing, sort of thing. Job done. That would get classed to some level as being aversion therapy, they would call it, under a different title. Doesn't matter what fancy name you give things. It's about results. It's about thinking outside the box. It's about doing what... Well, I was going to say it's about doing what works for the client. It is. But there is an element of doing what entertains you to make it fun to be helping the client as well. Yeah. Oh yeah, I wrote that down. Part of you. Because these are all parts of you. These perceptual positions or transactional analysis model shit. Parts of you. Well, there's another area of therapy that they call parts therapy. And the idea of this, whether they're hypnotised or not, although generally speaking, if you get someone with their eyes closed, in an eyes closed relaxation state, they do tend to be more suggestible, responsive and relaxed and not so. Is that you literally, when you're doing this, so how did that make you feel, that situation, shite? To get them to open up more and tell you more. Classic counselling, as they would call it. Rather than that, so thinking about yourself in different parts, you know, you've got your serious side and then the childlike side of you and the side that considers things, you know, which part of you would you say that affected? And it's a fucking metaphor, for fuck's sake. Alright, the idea is that they say that if, you know, they say, well, this part of me, you know, probably could do some work on, or this part of me particularly doesn't like that in that context, that then you're supposed to concentrate on, you know, changing the parts or healing the parts or strengthening the confidence in that part. It's whatever's relevant to the context, situation or issue. But ultimately, it's all just a bloody metaphor. The mud on the window's a metaphor. Clencing your fist and releasing it in your arm, feeling it, and that's all the worry, stresses, tensions, fears, apprehensions and shit from the past gone. It's a metaphor. Complete the TV set, the past is gone, the mirror walking, it's all a fucking metaphor. I suppose metaphor could be another word for placebo, couldn't it, in this context? But the point is, it works because of ritual and all the psychological elements we covered before. Now, right, slightly going off on one. Inner child work, in the context of high-end emotional issues. Stuff like where people have been bullied or they've grown up with, you know, it could be get a new set of teeth. Body morphic disorder. You know, where people basically look in a mirror and what they see is very different to what other people see. They see an ugly twat and everyone else sees a completely ugly twat. No, don't, it's not a good idea to tell the clients that, obviously. But they see someone they think's ugly and they could actually be quite attractive. You've got to give them that impression whether they are or not. That's sort of your role as the therapist, to make them feel better, just in case you haven't realised that by now. That's sort of the key to all this. Yeah, so it could have been, this could stem, you know, they may remember in their mind that, you know, when I was young I got bullied, people called me big nose or, you know, ginger nuts or rusty crotch or, you know, whatever. You know, kids are cruel. Sooner or less, you know, it goes bang, bang, bang into them. And, you know, and I did tell people about it, but all they said was, oh, you know, don't let the bullies know they've won, you know, stand up to them now. So there's all this emotional baggage and shit going on in there. So, an intervention for that works. I may just be giving you one example of what an intervention can be used for. But hopefully by now you're getting the idea that with a bit of common sense and thought you can use them in way more other areas. I'm loving the fact you're still sat there, that's fantastic. Obedient. You are sat down. But yeah, no, you can sit there if you want.
He's tired, he couldn't be bothered.
I keep slightly going off on one, but all of this does interrelate and it is important. So, we'll just take the example of that's the emotional baggage that you're dealing with. The fact the person feels a lack of self-esteem, confidence, because of the way this condition shite as a kid. So yeah, you can do your normal interventions, or you can do complete mind therapy to build up the self-esteem image and all this, that, the other, which we spoke about yesterday as being the key to it all. But if you happen to realise, because you'll have done your questionnaire, they come out and say, oh, lots of things that are relevant to when they were younger. So it's pretty damned obvious to a blind man, right, that it all started, or as far as they're concerned, even if they're wrong, even if consciously what they think started it has an even deeper rooted thing that they chose to forget or repress, it doesn't really matter. My viewpoint and experience is, despite what the textbooks say, that if the client believes that is what the cause was, if you focus on that, either A, they will be cured, or B, in the process of focusing upon that, they will have some kind of abreaction or realisation of something else. So rather than wasting shed loads of time doing what they call free association or psychoanalysis, which is, so if you take that idea, just link and connect in your mind, say the first thing, whatever comes into your head, however daft, just say the first thing, what is it? Oh, right, okay. And if you were to link something to that, just thinking about it now, what would it be? And getting them to just come out with all this random stuff. So ultimately, they apparently during this confusion and just free association, as it gets called, suddenly go, that's it, it's that. Or you build up a list of things in front of you on your pad that suddenly you looking at it go, every now and again they keep mentioning Uncle Bertie, birthday cake, pain, and or things relevant to that, in between all the various free associated stuff, and it becomes clear to you, even if it hasn't to them, that there might be a connection with Uncle Bertie, a birthday cake and pain, so that you can sort of bring it back to them. So if I was to say to you, a party, what would you free associate? And they come out with stuff, which is going to be more than likely bizarrely off on one. But your instinct, the evidence that's building up is such that you said party, one of the words, so that they've got to free associate from something that you're getting visually because it keeps coming up. So it's bringing them closer because you want them to have an abreaction. I'll talk about what abreactions are later today because that is probably really it's the most important thing. You want them to have this abnormal reaction, i.e. end up hysterically crying or whatever. Because that's going to be the proof to them that and the physical feeling that they offloaded all this shit and they can move forward. And that's the way you're going to anchor it positively for them anyway. So then I'm answering, okay, and that's interesting, yeah. That's good. Oh, yeah, apparently you've got to do the consideration and a bit of a nod after the client said something in psychoanalysis. Just to look like you're considering it. Like, that's good, yeah. So if I was to say family, what would you say? 'Cause it's nearly uncle, but it's not saying uncle. It's near enough that it's going to unsettle them a bit. You do this for a while, hopefully you'll get the idea where I'm coming from. And a bit then around perhaps buffet and cake, you know, I don't know. So a bit like, you might actually then, you know, after a while, if they haven't already broke down in tears and gone, oh yeah, it did all happen at the party, he bummed me over the table, whatever. It happens.
Yeah.
Well, people, it happens. But if you don't, eventually you just go, what seems to keep coming up here is, let's just for a moment take a few moments to concentrate on Uncle Birthday and the birthday cake. Well, what was that about? You see them go uncomfortable and tense up. Because they want to avoid it. If something comes up that isn't what they said it was, they will want to avoid it, because clearly they were avoiding it whether it was purposely or unconsciously before. But you've got to rattle the cage. One of the techniques is called the tree shaker. And everyone else, rattle the cage so that they do have the abreaction. So they get emotional, because it was emotion that suppressed it and hid it away. It's like the electric steam kettle. Not the electric steam kettle. Steam kettle on the gas, even, you know, on the hob. If you don't, you know, when it whistles, you have to pull the doobly out the end or press the bit on the handle so it opens, so it stops whistling, you know it's ready. But if it's left, it just keeps whistling and whistling and whistling to the point where it would boil dry, burn through, self-destruct. And the brain can be, the mind, the human being, the way it can be a bit like that kettle. Something happens that's so, I don't have to think about that phase away, it just gets pushed away, denied, pushed away, almost to the point where the person's convinced themselves it never happened. Unfortunately, what you've got to be very, very careful of here, if you get into, you know, this end of stuff, and there is way more about these things in my book, and stuff you take away, is that some people, in the height of emotion or the context of a ritual to help their life, do have very creative imaginations and can, not with any particular malicious intent, make something up. So-called false memory syndrome. So on no level do I suggest that if they come out and say Uncle Bertie bummed them, that you pick up the phone and call the police straight away. Really don't suggest that. They may not even have an Uncle Bertie. They might have accidentally walked in when their parents were watching a porn film that involved Uncle Bertie shagging. So it could have been mixed up, the memory. I'm giving you bizarre, weird, almost flippant sounding examples, but this is so you'll remember them really, because this is what it's about. It could be something else that they've mixed up. But to them, in that moment, that will be the most important thing. And it doesn't matter whether it's right, wrong, true, whatever. If that causes them to release that emotion, then that is the moment that you can future pace them, anchor positivity, make them feel better about themselves, make them come to terms with that part of themselves, do inner child work, which we'll come into in a minute, which would be particularly appropriate if in this sort of context. So a lot of this truly is common sense. You could go on courses that would take weeks, months, years. You could. And split you up into groups doing practicing. Apparently that's the ethical way to do this. You could, but there's still going to be that element of it's not a real life scenario. And yeah, there'll come a point where you're supposed to do supervised practice, so you're dealing with real clients. Although, you know, the client still has to know that you're being supervised within law, so it's knocking down the belief barriers a level anyway. There's nothing to legally stop anyone doing any of the stuff in England that I'm talking about, unless you were trying to use protected or copyrighted titles. Protected being like calling yourself a psychologist without having a psychology degree, or being registered correctly. Calling yourself a counsellor is a bit borderline, unless you've got relevant, you know, membership of British Association of Counselling and some perceived thing. But to use terms like complete mind therapy, do what the fuck you like with that. I'm telling you, because it's mine. To use the term hypnotherapy in England, it's not a protected title. There's different laws in different countries. In America, there's states where you can't call yourself a hypnotherapist. You have to call yourself a hypnotist. Clinical hypnotist. Because the term therapist is sort of like a protected title. There's information on the disc you take away about different countries in case you were thinking of moving there or trading or what have you. There is nothing to legally stop you doing it. Obviously you should be insured, we'll cover later in the day, and have the appropriate checks and safety elements in place, of course. But that should be the case, and is on many levels legally the case, whether you spend 3 years doing a course, that ultimately you're just going to be practicing the same thing again and again and again in different contexts, or you get out there doing it in the real world, and the more you do it, the better you'll get at it, of course. Of course you will. But if you're combining this with other interventions at the same time, such as complete mind therapy or whatever, one way or the other, the client's going to get out. I know it sounds a very shotgun approach. That's because it is. However, the shotgun approach, with every element in, because like complete mind therapy, so I basically included every fucking element that's of any use in NLP. Some element of it, some part of it, has got to be relevant to some part of that, in a way that feels right for you, of course. Combined with the tricks. A shotgun approach is going to get you the result quicker. It's simple as that, it is.
That's what people want at the end of the day.
Yeah. Well, now,
Some people don't.
if you've advertised yourself correctly, the client, which will be later in that, the clients that will come to you will want the fastest, easiest, quickest solution to their issues. And I suggest you seek out those clients, because they're the ones that are least likely to send you yourself, the ones you can have a bit more fun with, and the ones that are easier to deal with. If you're going to go into more emotional issues, this, that, the other, which frankly, you know, you actually now, arguably, I truly, sincerely feel, know as much as some people who've done weeks and weeks and weeks or month-long fucking courses on talking therapies. It's called talking therapies, but you know the truth of the matter is, you don't do a lot of fucking talking. The point of talking therapists is to have them doing all the talking and just occasionally go, oh, that's good. And how did that make you feel? Oh. So what do you think about that now? What do you think could be changed about that so that it no longer bothers you as it once did? Still using a lot of the phraseology. In fact, to be honest, a lot of counsellors don't use the fucking phraseology. That's why it takes them so long. But if you start using future facing and you know, disassociation. It's about getting them to open up, problem shared, a problem half and all that. Some people who out there do want to have that escapism. It's trendy in America to have your own shrink, you know? To go and see the guy once a week or the woman and lay on the couch and offload your shit from the past week and pay your money and go home. Fine, that is becoming more prevalent in England too. And fine, it is a way of making regular income from one client. I personally find that a little bit unethical, although obviously it isn't if that person genuinely just wants to talk and offload shit. But if they just want to talk and offload shit, go to the fucking pub and have a pint or something. You go in a pub, sit at the bar and observe, and you will see that landlords, good ones, there's some cunts out there, experienced landlords that have, say, been in one establishment for a large number of years that is still successful, are clearly good at something. It may not just, and it isn't just always about what they're serving up. You sit back and observe, these people are way better bloody counsellors than people who've done fucking months and months and months and months and months of this kind of shitty training. That is why the customer becomes dependent on wanting to go there. It may not be, this is ironic, for a lot of alcoholics that end up, right, they may drink at home and this like, but it can be around people that will listen to their shit, other alcoholics. Or it could be that they've got enough money to go to the pub and they've got someone who will listen to the shit behind the bar. So they never have to take responsibility for it themselves. They've always got someone to offload the shit onto. Right? And with the landlord, he's sort of semi-obliged, if he's any good as landlord, to do it, especially if the person's spending enough money. You know? This person becomes dependent on that. Not necessarily they get to a point where they're drinking too much and they become addicted to this. Can be. But, and this is a bit out there, some people will fucking really hate me for this if I do release this audio at any point. But I have found, and in fairness I will say for the record, I have not treated anywhere near as many alcoholics as perhaps you have. I don't know if you've dealt with alcoholism, Todd.
Yeah, not as much as.
Yeah. Right. But I imagine you've probably dealt with more alcoholics than me, to be honest. I'm guessing, but I think it's a fair guess. I know that I've certainly not dealt with as many alcoholics as Maria Klein, who I mentioned yesterday, who uses CMT as one of the elements of the intervention. But I found a lot of them, what is the real issue isn't so much an addiction to the alcohol, or to the cocaine, or to the heroin, or to the whatever the substance you want to put in that blank. The underlying feeling of, and it can be different for everyone, it might be worthlessness, or those things we talked about yesterday, not feeling loved, wanted, needed, appreciated, cared for, cherished, valued, and so on. They get a sense of that feeling that they are lacking in from the landlord. So they've got to go back there and have a drink. Now, this is the idea, because they need that sense of feeling. Or they get a sense of that feeling with the person they go and sit on the park bench with. It's about that wanting, why am I now starting to fucking well up there? Triggers things off when you come out with these words. But it's about a sense of wanting to belong, and I am setting myself off. This isn't acting, I'm setting myself off, because when you focus so much on these things, everyone at some level in their life has done something, rightly or wrongly, that after the event you may or may not regret, for that wanting to feel as though you fit in. Yeah, right. You have to excuse me, because I've set myself off. This would be called in therapy an abreaction to what I'm considering and talking about. But the dependency may not actually be the alcohol or the drugs, it is that sense of feeling they get that fills that gap. So, you've got, that is what you've got to, that is why in all this stuff, whether it's A, B, C, 1, 2, 3, parent, adult, child, parent, observant, child, or which part of you, whatever model, approach, name you give it, it's those underlying, as they would call it in psychoanalysis, underlying things that are the key. If you can get that person to get those sense of feelings that they get from, it might be in some regard that drug or alcohol, or that environment surrounding it, or the landlord or whatever, from some other source or outlet, and it is essentially as simple as that, even though it, you know, in real life there's more to it now, because they've got to get rid of perhaps a circle of friends. Certainly we do. But that's going back to igniters, draggers and all that we covered yesterday. But that is ultimately what your job is, high end, is to get that person to a realisation point where they go, I'm going to get rid of all the flipping draggers, and ideally, initially, to move forward in their life, they couldn't care lessers as well, so they can move forward a bit quicker. And you've got to give them a motive, a desire, a motivation, something to strive for, something that makes them feel good, that as they do that, they're getting more social proof and evidence to themselves that they feel good, which relates back to what I talked about yesterday. And then, when all that, and those needs, wants, cravings, desires that we all as humans have, are dealt with, which is why such an emphasis in CMT and the other approaches and the way I phrase stuff on feeling loved, wanted, needed, appreciated, cared for, on having your self-image, self-esteem, self-confidence, willpower, trust, patience, you know, all these type of things. I liken it to a... I liken it to... I'm just thinking of the best way of describing this. I liken it to, let's say, yeah. Everything starts with some issue, to a greater or lesser degree. Whether it's a phobia, an emotional issue, feelings of self-addiction, doesn't matter. Everything starts somewhere. As we already said yesterday, it doesn't particularly matter sometimes where it started, as long as you can help the client overcome it with simple things you can. For higher end drugs and all that, you're going to have to do some, what is the underlying cause shit, so you can identify and deal with the right thing. But there will be something. So this is like the starting point. And over the years, whether it's drug addiction or phobia, so if it's a phobia, it's, you know, let's say spider phobia. You see a spider, for whatever emotional reason, and we cover phobias this afternoon, they felt that they were scared. It started there. So then they always wanted to avoid spiders. And next time they did see one, for whatever reason, they'd ramped up, amplified the pain, the reaction. Oh no, that's more proof to them that they've got an issue with spiders. And the next time it ever happens, it's going to be bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger and so on. So this will become like some, it's not a good drawing, but like some sort of tree, big at the top and a trunk at the bottom. Obviously it gets bigger as it goes up. Your job, and this is a metaphor that I'm putting across to you to think about, because then if you think about everything I've told you yesterday and this morning and put it together, use some common sense, and I swear blind, honestly, from experience as well, because when I was 15, that's a year after I started script reading, I got an office at Rochdale Hypnotherapy Centre, rented a room off therapist their room. I managed to convince to let me have a room there, despite my age, because he'd seen all the stuff on the... He'd seen the stuff on the radio! Yeah, he'd heard the stuff on the radio, seen the stuff in the local press, and like, there was social proof there that I could do this. But his approach was hypnoanalysis, which was basically hypnotising the person so they're relaxed and then doing psychoanalysis, which is free association. The idea being that when they're relaxed, they'll free associate more and it's more likely to come up. So I borrowed his course notes from the course he'd done, read it all up, I thought, I don't know, I'll give that a try. I sort of wish I had, because as word got round, I did out. I went to the papers and I passed a course in it. And they run another article, so I then got clients contacting me, and at the age of 15, I was treating rape victims, child abuse victims. And I can stand here and honestly say that I helped change their life fucking dramatically. Or I can arguably say that. In truth, all I did was point them in the right direction to come to certain realisations themselves and move forward. They did it in the end. But it fucked about with my head, I can tell you. And I can tell you, by choice, I prefer to shy away as much as possible from dealing people with what I would call high-end issues now, because it does send you a bit. And you'll find that people who work in the area who deal with higher end issues do end up on some level going a bit to a greater or lesser degree, and generally need, well, peer supervision can be called, but a fancy less disturbing title for will be in therapy themselves to offload the baggage that they're taking on from the people that they're helping unload the baggage from. This is ringing all over.
Yeah.
That is why I tend to just deal with smoking, weight loss, confidence issues, stress management, phobias, occasionally obsessive compulsive disorders, because ultimately you treat them in pretty much the same way as phobias, which you'll see this afternoon, and anything else I farm out to other people and take a commission for so doing.
But they could still have those root problems that may come up.
They
So
could.
even in those instances.
They could, but if they come for a phobia, the way I will treat that phobia is such that I don't even want to know what bloody started it. Smoking, weight loss, I don't even need to know what caused it. Which you'll see this afternoon. Their approach is that it doesn't matter if Uncle Bertie bummed them situation. The fact is, if at that time while they were getting bummed by Uncle Bertie, a spider went across the table and that became the visual trigger of, I don't want to think about that shit, we can still remove the phobia, because all the phobia is a visual trigger to a sense and a feeling. And if we can break that in such a manner that it can't, symptom substitution it gets called, like, you know, if you stop somebody smoking quite often they may start eating more. So you make sure to avoid that in your therapy by, at some point, not on the audio disc, but at some point, bunging in something along the lines of, you know, and you'll find that, you know, you no longer need, want, crave or desire for cigarettes or tobacco in any way, shape or form. And you find that as you continue your life as a confident, happy, healthy, relaxed non-smoker, that you won't start biting your fingernails or eating more food instead because you feel good as the new, just fucking throw it in. Some things are obvious. Although there is a school of thought that if they come to you pay money to stop smoking, and they pay you for that and they go away and remain a non-smoker, if they start eating more cakes and turn into an elephant, that they're going to come back to you for weight loss therapy then. And some will say, well, that's unethical, but if they came to you paid to stop smoking and you provide them with that service, that's fair exchange. And highly likely to get you a weight loss client someday.
Yeah, because they believe that's going to happen to them a lot of the time, don't they, when they stop smoking.
But as long as they,
so.
it's all about people needing something to focus on in life. Everyone needs a distraction, a focus, a crutch. For some that's positive. It can be going to the gym. It can be drinking X amount of bottles of bottled water a day. It can be, well, I must have my classical music hour each day, otherwise I'm going to get ratty. or it, you know, everyone has something. For some people, it is going to the pub for the drinks. For some people, it is the wacky backy, or I always get mixed up. You know, I don't know the difference between injecting drugs and smoking. I can't tell you the number of times I've burnt my arm with a spliff. It's fucking ridiculous. But it's different for everyone, and when you realise that, the fact is that you can remove that issue, but the person still needs something to be dependent on. Everyone in life needs something to be dependent on.
I've got a friend who smokes and bites nails. Well, often not at the same time, but she's frightened if I stop her smoking and biting her nails that she'll start eating more.
Well, how you deal with that's up to you. Personally, I'd charge her money and stop her smoking. And put in that you will not bite your nails any more than you did anyway. And then at a separate session, I'd stop the nail biting, like. And the chances are at some point symptom substitution will occur, which means that whatever the underlying reasons are for those behaviours being displayed, they will manifest themselves through some other addiction, obsession or thought process. Or you could, and we'll be covering this afternoon, so I'll just remind myself, or you could stop a smoking to start with, then stop the nail biting, but stop the nail biting, and this is an option we'll do this afternoon, by the therapeutic invention being by replacing it with an addiction. But an addiction to drinking a certain number of bottles of bottled water a day. Something, or eating a certain number of carrot sticks a day. Something that is healthy and appropriate within that person's you know, lifestyle. Replace it with an addiction. Fuck it. Everyone needs something to be dependent on. But make it something that is healthy and positive for them. Again, people will say I'm being irresponsible saying that, some would, but you know the sad truth is if people who work in those fields who say I'm fucking being a bit unethical are truthful, deep down they probably do themselves get more success with options like that. I bet you've come across colleagues that... Everyone needs something to be dependent on. Every one of you in this room has something in your life. Even though you might sit there and think, I'm not a drug addict, I'm not obsessive, I don't have compulsions. Everyone in this room has something that, dependent seems a severe word, but something in your life that gives you more pleasure.
We were having a conversation about addiction last night, and I said, you know, generally it will pop up in another area. That's just what happens.
So, get the person, transfer the addiction or the compulsion or the thought process to something that's ultimately going to be positive for that person. But by being still an addiction, fulfills the need for that element, that part of what is a natural personality trait for every human being. Yeah, makes sense? And I'll show you how to transfer it from one to the other this afternoon with bungee technique. But just to finish before lunch, because basically we do need to work for lunch, so we can have done that and got out of any pub or whatever before people are getting ready for football. Whether it's a phobia that builds up and becomes more like a tree, a compulsion or whatever, you end up with your tree in the trunk. Now, conventional old talking therapies would say, well, you've got to be the tree surgeon and start chipping bits through talking and letting them offload stuff from the top, preening the tree so it becomes a bit smaller. And after the next session, a bit smaller, and a bit smaller, and then a bit off the top. Fast change work, hypnosis, in the style I'm on about, NLP, call it what you will, but using these quick approaches, is about saying, what's the fucking point in that? The trunk's the smallest bit. Well, it is in this metaphor. The trunk's the smallest bit. it's going to be a damn sight easier than taking weeks with tools and hours and hours and hours and hours to preen this tree, to go and cut through the trunk. That's when things became that bit quicker, years and years ago. They sort of speeded things up. So then the tree's going to collapse, it's gone. But that's what set it off, and if you remove what set it off, then it's no longer an issue. Remove the underlying cause, the symptoms disappear. Or rather, substitute themselves somewhere else.
What if I can't remember what was the underlying cause? I'd like to say.
Doesn't matter.
Leanne, for instance, she's got a fear of thunder, but she doesn't know what caused it, because when she was a kid she used to go out playing like all kiddies do, stupid,
Well,
running out in
if that's just a
thunderstorm.
bit, don't matter, because you'll be using something like the phobia cure, so you don't need to know, and they don't need to know. I'm talking more about people who've high-end stuff. But alright, so it is quicker to cut through the trunk than up there, but as any experienced tree surgeon would tell you, it's easier than cutting through there is to cut in a wedge in an appropriate place so that it gets a weak point and collapses. And ultimately that is what all the, what do you call it, transactional analysis, bloody CBT, all the things we've talked about, looked at, and hopefully now identified, I hope, are all essentially the same. They're all essentially just different models, ways of explaining the same fucking thing, different ways of getting to the same end result, that ultimately when you compare them together all work for the same bloody reasons, which is the reasons we went through yesterday: ritual, authority, belief, expectancy, the scenario, pain and pleasure. It all is the same thing. It's no more complicated than that. It's that simple that it is overly complicated, because you can allow yourself, as many people do, to start to think there's got to be more to it. And there is feck all, frankly, me or anyone on any course on this planet can do to convince you totally that it is this simple. Sadly, for a lot of people, it does become the reality that they have to go and waste money on courses till they get so pissed off and it becomes so painful for them that the penny drops and they go, you know what, it is as simple as all that. I sincerely hope, Lord, because this afternoon, as well as showing you the fast phobia cure, how to substitute symptoms for positive ones, a few other therapeutic approaches, the pain control, no easy therapy, and then the laws and stuff, and how to get up in business and make money in the ethical shit. I truly hope that you do not fall into that trap. People tend to believe things more when they get social proof. We've shown that. That's a large amount of therapy. So, the social proof is here, in this room now. Well, the social proof was on the sales letter for this event. There were links to people that I've taught with their websites. You can check out the real people. And they're doing it successfully. And all I told them is what I told you. Actually, I probably didn't tell them as much as I have told you. Because never before at an event have I gone into all the flipping transactional analysis, this, that, the other, and we've still got to cover in the chart later. Does anyone get sense? I'm trying to avoid that. I don't know why, but it does work wonderfully. Go on. Somebody. Tell me. My brain literally has gone blank. That's because I looked at those fucking words.
It's as simple as it sounds.
Yeah, it is as simple as it sounds. Social proof is the other people I've taught. I haven't told them as much as this. What they're going out there, they're doing it. The DVDs you'll take away is more likely what they've encountered before. The ones you take away at the end of the weekend, and you'll see it doesn't go into as much depth as this, ironically. And yet they're being incredibly successful. We have people in the room that have been doing this for a number of years, some more than others, some in different areas. You mainly stage, but you have done therapy, and as you've already said, social proof. CMT works for it. You worked in the drug field way on a much bigger level than my experience, and a few times you've said, yeah, that's exactly, bottom line, that's it.
Yeah.
So don't listen to me in that regard, listen to someone who knows far better than me in that field. Everyone will choose, no doubt, or get drawn towards, or just bizarrely, naturally attract towards them, ultimately, a certain clientele, if you go into this business. Having a niche is always better anyway, because you can look like an expert. That way you'll make more money if you know. However, it just naturally happens, you will tend to get more of one type of client, because you'll naturally become good, more, better. Like I said yesterday, it'll probably be something that relates to something in your life, or did do, so you can have more empathy, as they call it, more understanding. Yeah, it is as simple as that. So, to make it even simpler, after lunch, we'll do the fast phobia cure. At some point, we will cover the initial bit, just slightly, because then I feel I've covered all the so-called normal psychological therapeutic approaches. So, I'm just leaving that one. But we'll do the bungee substitution of things, fast phobia cure, no easy therapy, past life regression. We'll
Visual reading.
Yes.
well, I mention it, but I can't teach it because it's trademarked and it's not mine, but I can teach you the swish pattern and tell you what it's about, and when you see videos you'll understand it. But you're not then allowed to advertise it, obviously. The legal stuff, and, well yeah, we'll just bring it all together. Although hopefully by now, please, pray, even if there's still part of your head, as I'm sure there will be at the moment for 1 or 2 people going, it can't be this simple. Even if there is that element going, it can't be that simple, it's not going to work. Even if that bit's still there, if for some reason it's still here, when really you want it over there, gone completely, even if there's still that niggling down, I would hope that at the very least by now, you're coming to a realisation and a belief that whether you call it cognitive behavioural therapy, transactional analysis, perceptual fucking positions, inner child, whether you call it CMT, CBT, hypnotherapy, NLP, tapping therapies, meridian therapies, psychoanalysis, whatever you call it, they all work the same way and for the same reasons. And as long as the largest amount of your brain can sincerely and honestly and truly within you believe at least that much, you're 90 to 95% of the way there to being able to be, frankly, more successful and competent as a therapist. It could be whatever. If you're in a country where you're allowed to use those words, obviously. Or a complete mind therapist, or a complete mind therapy consultant, or whatever, than a hell of a lot of therapists out there. Because ultimately, it's not rocket science. You don't have to have special powers, although I suppose in this day and age common sense and a brain cell could be classed as special powers, in which case congratulations, you're all superheroes in some regard just for being it. It's about just putting processes and things in place. So this afternoon we'll cover those other bases, and then between them you ultimately will then be able to, so should you so desire, to pretty much help anyone with anything from A through to Z that you're allowed to within law. But that'll become vital at the end of the day when I tell you there's certain things you're not allowed to do legally, for obvious reasons. So on that note, I make it 1:10. Can we be back here no later than 2:30? Preferably a little bit earlier if possible, but 2:30 at the latest, and I'm saying that because I'm realistic that when the football starts at 3 o'clock today, that it might take longer for people to get served and stuff. So yeah, it's 10 past now. Can we be back here for 2:30, please? Because yeah, loads more to cover. Cheers. Not going to leave that on.
That reminds me.
Well, right.
Rob,
No.
We've got
Thank
3
you.
clients actually all addicted to
Why
carrots.
not?